Joseph Anthony Papanelli, and I'm here to give you an informative speech about Magic the Gathering. I teach you how to play Magic the Gathering, but it's a long process and it takes a lot of time. And frankly, I only have 4 to 5 minutes. So what I am going to do is give you kind of a rundown of how the cards work, and then you'll be better prepared if should you ever want to learn how to play Magic the Gathering. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you about is lands. They're complicated lands that do all kind of strange stuff, but for today, I'm just going to tell you about basic lands. You have 5 basic lands that come in 5 basic colors. You have forests, which are green, swamps, which are black, islands, which are blue, plains, which are white, and mountains, which are red. Now, with these 5 types of mana, you can cast spells of many different sorts, and we'll go over those in a minute. Basically, you need a certain type of mana to cast a certain type of spell. So if it's a blue card, you would most likely need islands for blue mana. Now, in the spell category, there are 4 different types of spell cards. There are sorceries, instants, enchantments, and creatures. The first one we're going to go over is creatures. It's the most basic principle. Creatures come in many different forms. They're usually a certain color and then a non-color. So you would cast them with, say, like a red, and this one is any other color. So you can use a red and a blue or a red and a white. Creatures do count as spells, but they are something that physically stay on the board and they can keep attacking every turn. Now, creatures generally have something about them that is an ability, some sort of special ability to each creature. Some creatures don't, most do. They have attack power and defense power. It's the numbers at the bottom to let you know how hard they hit and how much damage they can take. And then with their abilities, you can do, like I said, many different other things. The second card I'm going to talk about is instants. Instants are sorcery that you can play at any time. You can play it during your turn, during your opponent's turn. Literally, anytime you have the mana to cast it, or the lands to cast it, you can. They do thousands of different things, depending on how rare they are, depends on how powerful they are, and depending on what color they are, depends on what specialty they are. The third is enchantments. Now, enchantments stay on the board, usually as well, and have an odd ability. They can only be played during your turn. For this particular enchantment, it's called Fawn of Ire. You pay 2 to play it, and then you pay 4 more and put the card in your graveyard, and it does 5 damage to the target player. Interpret the Signs is the sorcery I chose to show you. Sorceries can only be played during your turn as well, but as soon as you use them, they go in the graveyard. They're kind of like instances, but they can only be played during your turn. Now, all these cards vary from common to legendary in terms of rareness, and their abilities span infinitely as to what they can do. Generally, when you look at a red deck, what it does is blast damage. It does damage to the player himself and skips all the damage that you would do otherwise. What a blue damage does is it's kind of a control deck. It controls another person's hand, it makes them discard cards or draw cards. It lets you draw cards or discard cards, and it tends to encumber the other person's creatures. Green decks tend to be growth decks. That means you can play a card and then make it bigger and make it bigger and make it bigger and hurt them even more. Black decks tend to be death decks, which means they're there just to destroy creatures and hurt the other player. It's pretty straightforward as well. And white decks are life decks. They tend to pump you up with life while protecting all your cards and protecting all your creatures. So that's the basic idea of Magic the Gathering. Your opponent has 20 life and you have 20 life, and whoever gets the other opponent down to 0 first wins. You can build your own decks, or decks come pre-made. It's totally up to you. Or you can do a combination where you buy a built deck and then get pre-made, get boosters and mix it up yourself. And that's the rundown of Magic. Like I said, I haven't taught you how to play, because that would take a long time, but at least you have some idea of the grasp of the game. And that's all for this week.